So, how big does he remain with Kiss fans?
Pretty big, pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot. You know, the thing is too with him is he was very talented. He had a good voice. He would sing a song or two live. He would usually co-write a song each album. And the thing with a lot of Kiss fans, they feel like that his talents maybe weren't utilized as much as they could have been because Gene and Paul, who are the two main members who stayed with Kiss throughout all the years, they got the majority of all the songwriting at that point, which I totally understand because they were first there. So, of course, they want, all the songwriting, credits and also royalties.
Today as we're doing this interview, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame announces, blah, 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 still no Kiss.
Yeah, well, there's so many bands like Deep Purple, Kiss, Thin Lizzy. There's so many bands that should be in there that aren't. That
Alice Cooper went in today.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a big thing. But there's I could list so many bands that should be in there that aren't, like bands that influence so many bands after them. That's just ridiculous. I don't know how they decide who goes in and who doesn't.
It's Jan Wenner's record collection. Whatever he personally had back at that time, he still loves and they get in. I don't know why people are so offended by that, though.
I personally, as a fan, really don't care. I don't watch any of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame things, and I have no interest in watching these big, horrible sounding jam sessions at the end of these Rock and Roll Hall of Fame things, where you can't hear anything; it just sounds like shit, and you hear a bunch of guys that just totally hack a song to death. I have better things to do with my time.
And yet, people love a list. I don't know what it is about a list, but if you put out a list and say, here's the 7, best horror movies, people debate that forever.
Yeah,
they love it.
The thing also with rock music is people tend to say, well, if a band sold a lot of records, therefore they must be good. And that to me is just totally bull. Some of my favorite bands didn't sell anything like Bad Brains is a huge example. That's a band that was so great. I mean, broke down so many barriers, yet they didn't sell really just about anything, but just the mark they left is just amazing on rock music.
And yet, everybody in DC claims they were at every show that those guys ever went. Which I'm like, wouldn't they have been bigger if you saw them here, there, and there?
Right.
Because, but it is always the funniest thing. And Velvet Underground in New York is the same way.
Stooges is also another
Stooges,
band.
Where at the time people, maybe weren't paying attention, except for kids who were learning to play music. They're like, this band's kicking ass.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, like you take a band like the Stooges, you think about how many bands listed them as an influence, everyone from Guns N' Roses to Soundgarden.
Right.
I can keep going on and on about all these huge, huge bands that list the Stooges as an influence. Meanwhile, they didn't really sell as many records when they were together in the late 60s, early 70s.
What's the next book going to be about?
Well, I'm working with Carmine Appice, who is the drummer for Rod Stewart, and also he was with Jeff Beck in the early 70s, Vanilla Fudge, Cactus, and he also played briefly with Ozzy. I'm doing a book with him about his whole life story, and this book, I'm telling you, is going to make Hammer of the Gods seem like a little children's book. He's not holding anything back. It's just amazing. It's going to be great from when you pick the book up, read the first page to the last page.
And he, like you said, he's been around the longest and still lives rock and roll.
Yep, and I saw him this past year play with the Michael Schenker Group, and I can tell you he still plays as great as ever. He still has it.
And isn't he also just doing some kind of a drum thing that...
Yes.
Just drummers together?
Yeah, it's called Slam. And it's like a big kind of like drum collective thing. It's kind of similar to Stomp, I think.
Right.
Yeah, and it's, probably a little more like heavier.
Is he still with the radio chick?
Yes.
We used to work with her.
I actually had the pleasure of going to his house about a month ago, and I happened to meet the radio chick who was there.
Yeah, we used to work with her. She's great.
Yep, she is great.
All right, thanks so much for coming in. It's when MTV ruled the world. MTV ruled the world, which is a statement. And then the Eric Carr story. Thanks so much for coming in, man.
Thanks. I just wanted to say, to get this book, you go to lulu.com, which is LULU.com, and you can do a search for my name, Greg Prato, which is Prato, or do a search for Eric Carr or MTV, and you can find the books that way.
Thanks so much, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.